How dare you? I should be in school, under the ocean. Happening, folks? I have had a bit of an epiphany this week, and I would like to share that with you quickly before I start the review. As some of you already know, I have been working really hard to try and make this channel a success. I've also been very open about the fact that I think my content is at least as good as a lot of the channels that are making money here on YouTube. I build these 3D environments from scratch, so you've always got something interesting to look at. Wherever it's appropriate, I keep everything lighthearted and fun. I even superimpose myself into the movies sometimes so I can deliver sarcastic quips directly to the actors, all in the name of entertainment. Whether I've loved the movie or hated the movie, I always explain how I've arrived at my conclusions, and every opinion I have expressed, without exception, has been sincere and entirely my own. And that has been my mistake. This channel's growth has been embarrassing, and the longer I do these reviews, the fewer views I'm getting. And as an old-fashioned, hard-working guy, it's been very hard to accept. I started writing a goodbye script for my final review last week, and then somebody sent me a link to a video.
This is not a movie review of Madam Web. I am not about bashing filmmakers, artists. I know how hard it is to make a movie.
I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I will say that video changed my life. And starting from right now, I will be following the teachings of YouTube's superstar, millionaire movie critic messiah, Chris Stuckmann. For those of you who don't know, Chris Stuckmann is arguably the biggest movie critic here on YouTube. For the last year or two, he's been cosplaying as an actual filmmaker. And in this most inspiring video, Chris has just revealed he's had his spine surgically removed to appease a group of Hollywood elites he hopes to be friends with one day. And in the name of emulating the success of people with millions of subscribers who obviously know better than I do, I'm gonna start working smart like Chris instead of hard and honestly the way I've been doing it up until now. In today's review, I am going to tell you everything I loved about Eli Roth's 2023 horror flick, Thanksgiving. I'm also going to tell you how amazing the movie is, specifically as a slasher. And if at any point I feel that old urge to call out something I disagree with, I'm going to swallow that urge, no matter how many times it happens. You might be thinking, won't that kind of unnatural behavior eventually lead to insomnia and anxiety and depression and cardiac issues? Yes, of course it will. But by the time all those bad feelings start manifesting that way, I figure by then I'll have already made a load of new Hollywood friends, the way Chris Stuckmann's hoping he's going to. And you know what they say about Hollywood friends? They've always got loads of hard drugs to make the bad feelings go away. Yes, I will still be superimposing myself into some of the movies, but from now on I'll be doing it in a way the production companies would want me to be doing it. And hopefully all of this is just going to help YouTube to realize that I, Johnny Recaps, is worthy of Chris Stuckmann's level of success too. And here's my review. This movie opens during Thanksgiving in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And if you pay very close attention to this opening scene, it tells the viewers exactly who the killer is almost immediately. And if you're thinking that might ruin things for your average viewer, you need to remember it's 2024 and the viewer only really matters right up until they've paid for their ticket. As an amazing cerebral statement about economic class warfare in America, Eli Roth shows us two distinct groups of people preparing for their Thanksgiving gatherings. The average Joe, blue-collar, working grunt group's dinner is cut short when the father of the household's called into work to manage a Black Friday sale. And while that's going on, the business owner having the Black Friday sale's enjoying an extravagant, luxurious, well-deserved feast with his loved ones in the comfort of their palatial estate. And given I've just made it known to the world I intend to finally blow my channel up by copying the behavior of Chris Stuckmann, I don't think you'll be shocked to find out which of the families I'll be having my dinner with tonight. And if any of my non-American viewers are suddenly concerned for my safety, given we've watched this once great nation descend into chaos and anarchy in the last few years, worry not, my friends. After spending lots of time amongst the wonderful, hospitable residents of the great US of A, I have no fears whatsoever. All you have to do is blend in and let your confidence do the speaking for you.
Hey, 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 happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks for inviting me to spend time with your wonderfully rich family. I've never had Thanksgiving dinner before. Wasn't sure what to wear. Oh, please don't shoot. Meanwhile, a rambunctious crowd is gathered outside the Right Mart Superstore in anticipation of the doors opening for the sale. And again, to demonstrate his unquestionable aptitude for inventiveness, Eli Roth has one of the characters repeat one of the lines Quentin Tarantino wrote for his character in Inglourious Basterds. Eli Roth's choice to tip his hat to something he said is the move of an incredibly confident director, as he's essentially paying homage to himself in his own movie. Nell Verlaque is playing our main character, Jessica Wright, and her father Thomas owns the store. And her father Thomas's servants made me dinner earlier. And maybe one day after YouTube's made me a millionaire and I have my own servants, I just might invite Chris Stuckmann round to my palatial estate for dinner. Although probably not, because he seems staggeringly boring. Jessica sneaks her friends in through the store's side door, and when some of the angry onlookers see what they've done, it whips the crowd into a frenzy. You may recall me saying Jessica's family owns the store just a moment ago, and you might be wondering why they're in the store at all. Never mind sneaking into the side door when the sale's just about to start. After all, given they'd have unfettered access, they could have just taken what they wanted out of the stock a few days ago before it was even unpacked. And if you did think that, well, there's countless resources available online and in your local libraries designed to help you understand the art of movie making. So I'd recommend you get looking into that as soon as possible so you can stop looking like such a dumbass in public questioning the decisions of Eli Roth. If I had the time to explain the rock-solid logic of them all going into the store like that, I would. But I think my videos are already too long for YouTube's liking. And besides, half of what I'd be saying would be fancy filmmaking lingo. The last thing I'd want is to confuse you with a bunch of technical terms like tableau vivant and depth of field. Without warning, the crowd explodes into an unruly mob and the security team is not able to effectively handle the situation. And given the big, pudgy, adorable, teddy bear-faced, hilarious comedian Tim Dillon is running the security, it's hardly surprising. But we're gonna forgive Tim today because his unique brand of stand-up comedy truly shines a light during the dark, complicated times of 2024. Inside the Superstore, lots of folks get killed to death, including Gina Gershon's Amanda Collins, who was the wife of the store manager in the opening dinner scene. Jessica's baseball star boyfriend Bobby ends up breaking his arm. That makes him disappear from the group at the end of the night. Exactly 1 year later, in spite of public protest, Right Mart's getting ready for yet another Black Friday sale. While that's going on, Jessica and her friends all receive a photograph of a Thanksgiving dinner table with all of their names around it. And then somebody trashes the John Carver Historical House and steals a decorative axe from the wall. Happening, folks? Johnny here, and for the benefit of my non-American viewers, John Carver came over on the Mayflower in 1620, and he went on to become the first governor of Plymouth in 1621, and then he died. Listen, folks, full transparency, I want you all to know I am still getting used to a lot of the new thoughts and beliefs and ideologies I'll eventually be pushing onto you through this channel on behalf of my new Hollywood buddies. But I'm a quick study. And also, I've had a quick reference guide done up for me by one of my colleagues over at Chris Stuckmann's channel. You're probably right there. I purchased a quick reference guide from a member of Chris Stuckmann's staff for any time I'm feeling out of my depth during this transition period. So for now, let's just say I hope my little tidbit of information helps you in understanding the historical significance of Eli Roth's incredible character choices. And finally, fuck the colonizing white invaders. After leaving Plymouth a year ago with his broken arm, Bobby reappears in time for the holidays and he finds out his ex-girlfriend's now dating Ryan, who's your average, standard, typical, privileged douchebag. The first of the victims in this slasher is a waitress named Lizzie. She's done in by a sleek fella dressed in black wearing a John Carver mask. When the police figure out Lizzie was at the Black Friday massacre, they conclude the John Carver killer's targeting people who were involved. If you think that connection was drawn far too quickly and feels tenuous at best, you should probably shut up with the criticism or I'm going to block you from my channel. So, in hopes of helping out, Jessica Jessica hands over CCTV footage to the police chief Eric Newland, played by Patrick Dempsey. And then the John Carver killer continues his holiday mass murder streak with somebody I used to think was one of the funniest comedians on earth when I started writing this script, but I have just read Dua Lipa's offended by something Tim Dillon said on Twitter this afternoon, so even though I'm not 100% on what Dua Lipa is, I am totally happy he was killed in this movie now. Truth be told, I never really found him funny anyways. I was just being polite because I felt sorry for him. Next to go are Amy and Lonnie, and unfortunately they're too far down the casting hierarchy for me to bother looking up their actors' names. But then Evan and Gabby get abducted, and I have no idea who's playing Evan, but I do know Gabby is being played by Addison Rae, who's very attractive. And that makes her a tremendous actor. This is Yulia, and all the violence and lack of civility causes her father to pick up the family and move them to Florida, which is a backward state in America that believes in charging criminals when they commit crimes. But John Carver is really on his game in this movie, and he gets to Yulia before they've had a chance to split. And while he's working away on her, Jessica shows up with Scuba, played by Gabriel Davenport, who I'm not familiar with either, but something in my guts tells me, just from looking at him, he won't be receiving anything but praise for his acting abilities in this film and probably any other he's ever in. I don't need to remind you folks, this is a slasher film and it's still early on in the story, so John Carver gets away. Then out of desperation, the police try drawing the John Carver killer out of the crowd during a Thanksgiving parade. They convince Scuba and members of the Wright family to dress up as pilgrims to help them pull it off. But John Carver somehow figures out their plan too, and everything descends into holiday chaos yet again. And in that chaos, Carver manages to pluck Scuba and the Wright family right out from under everybody else's nose. And then the Carver killer cooks Jessica's stepmother Kathleen in a big old oven and serves her to his hostages at a dinner table filled with the corpses of the previous victims. And if you're a fan of practical special effects like I am, you might agree Tim Dillon's head has a next level realism to it you rarely see in slasher movies. It's a notoriously difficult effect to pull off. And given Dua Lipa's current popularity, as per the Google search I did on her 3 minutes ago, I wouldn't be surprised if we were looking at Tim Dillon's actual head. Burn in hell, funny man. That'll teach you to make people laugh. The John Carver killer uses a cell phone to turn the dinner into a live stream, and he batters Evan to death on camera, which doesn't bother me one bit, as he's been speaking in cliches since the opening scene.
Which was obviously a choice Mr. Roth made. Clearly, he wanted us annoyed by Evan's dialogue, probably so everybody in the audience would feel exactly how I just felt seeing his violent and deserved death. And knowing that was all orchestrated makes me feel very safe and comfortable in Eli Roth's big, capable directorial hands.
Then Jessica and Scuba cut their way out of their bindings. Jessica hops over a fence and barely escapes before disappearing into the woods. Then she ends up in a warehouse where she finds Police Chief Patrick Dempsey unconscious. And her ex-boyfriend Baseball Bobby is there too, and he's wearing the John Carver mask. But he gets away before her and the chief can catch him. Eventually, the rest of the cops show up and they assure everybody the rest of the survivors are okay. Then Jessica notices Chief Patrick Dempsey's boots are the same ones she was chased by when she hopped the fence. And that is when the penny drops for everybody. Once he knows the jig's up, he admits his guilt and gives the audience an explanation for his actions. Apparently, he was having an affair with Gina Gershon's Amanda, and she was pregnant with his child when she was killed in the Black Friday riots. And that was his motivation for taking on the John Carver motif and killing everybody involved in the massacre. And I'm sure you'll all agree with me when I say, yeah, that's exactly how I would have reacted in the same circumstances. He also admits to putting Bobby into the Carver costume while he was unconscious so he could shoot him as the suspect later on. Right when it looks like he's about to get away with everything, Jessica reveals she's been live streaming his entire confession the whole time. And after a quick scuffle between Jessica and Bobby and the chief, Jessica shoots a parade balloon full of flammable gas. And that puts an end to the chief and this remarkable story.
There you have it, folks. The flawless plot to Eli Roth's flawless movie
flawlessly titled Thanksgiving. As you probably already know, every subgenre in horror has its own set of rules and tropes, and slashers are no different. And next up, I'm going to explain how Eli Roth nailed every single aspect of this perfect slasher horror movie. And frankly, I don't think I appreciate the implication he might not have done that. Everybody knows most of the characters in a slasher movie are there to be killed, but it's important there's some variety in the characters' backgrounds so their reactions aren't all the same. Thanksgiving's cast is a mix of acting veterans and absolute newcomers. Their performances range from totally over the top to convincingly terrified at times. So, in terms of the acting, Eli Roth has done an incredible job, seeing as he would have signed off on each of the actors. Then, after he's given us a wide range of people to relate to, his next job is to get us worrying about them. In order for that to happen, he'll need to create a tense and suspenseful atmosphere for them to navigate. To create a tense and suspenseful atmosphere, several things need to be done properly at the same time, and the score is one of them. You only need to think about my legendary potential future best friend John Carpenter's Halloween piano, or Psycho's screeching violins to realize the weight a slasher movie's soundtrack can carry. Thanksgiving's score, done by Nathan Bars, complemented the movie's roller coaster shifts in tone, and it blended some eerie melodies with some more recognizable traditional Thanksgiving songs. He combined them in a way that gave us a surprisingly unsettling juxtaposition of tone. And that means Eli Roth knocked it out of the park on the score front too, because he hired Nathan Bars. Another factor contributing to the movie's atmosphere is the dialogue. Thanksgiving's was full of puns and thick Plymouth accents and enough horror cliches to base this movie in a buttery layer of camp you'll either love or hate. I happen to think it worked perfectly with this sort of movie, so I loved him. I loved it, the dialogue in this movie. I loved. In addition to everything Thanksgiving's already gotten perfect, we also need to see the characters isolated in some way after the action kicks off. If they don't appear isolated, we're never going to believe they were ever really in danger. Roth chose to set this movie in the town of Plymouth, and some people felt it's not possible to isolate characters in such an open space. These people suggested Roth could have isolated the cast by trapping them inside the store. Or he could have sent them all north a year later to commemorate the loss of their friends in a secluded cottage somewhere. And while those people are entitled to their views, I'd simply ask them, if the characters weren't isolated, how did they all end up at the final dinner table with the killer at the end of the movie? And now that we've disproved that stupid theory, let's discuss plausibility, which also contributes to the movie's overall atmosphere. While nobody had an issue with the killer dressing up as a historical figure and wiping out a handful of innocent victims, a small group of folks online complained the execution of some of the killings left them scratching their heads. They claimed Tim Dillon's kill was silly and physically impossible because it required his character to miss a full-grown man hiding just on the other side of his kitchen table. And also, when Yulia's taken out, she failed to notice the full-sized costumed man standing a few inches away from her in her modest little bedroom. And to these people, I would suggest, from one movie lover to another, they'd probably have a lot more fun watching slasher movies if they'd stop picking at the details and start remembering Eli Roth is an artistic treasure. One of the oldest tropes in slasher movies happens to be one of the oldest tropes in horror, that being the concept of the final girl. Some horror fans complain Thanksgiving's final girl, Jessica, was handed the coveted title by default as opposed to earning it, simply because she didn't get her ass kicked and her hair and her skin looked perfect at the end of the movie. These are some of the same people who claimed Mia didn't deserve the final girl title in Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead in 2013. These so-called final girl experts point to characters like Laurie Strode and Ellen Ripley and Sally Hardesty as the gold standard, because they ended up the final girl after surviving prolonged physical and emotional batterings. And on this subject, I'll point out, firstly, those movies were from like 100 years ago, and secondly, Jessica cut through the ropes with her ring. She chose to put that pointy ring on that morning. It was her brave decision, I will remind you. And if you're so upset her face and her hair weren't all disgusting by the end of the movie, maybe you should be asking John Carpenter and Ridley Scott and Tobe Hooper why their final girls weren't more concerned with their own appearances. Next up, arguably the most important element of a great slasher is the villain themselves. John Carver was a brilliant idea, and given the holiday, he's really the only logical choice if you think about it, but some people felt he wasn't intimidating enough, and that having him feed a cat sent a confused message, given that's something you'd normally have the hero do as a signal to the audience he's a good guy deep down. Now, obviously, people who feel this way are stupid idiots who don't understand the limitations of trying to keep a mass killer's identity a secret. I suppose these people think every slasher should be Victor Crowley, and maybe they'd have been happier if John Carver cut the fucking cat in half instead. It's Thanksgiving. Sir Eli Roth gave you a guy wearing a pilgrim costume who kills with an old axe. You want character development for your slasher? Maybe some more backstory? Maybe he should have been motivated by his mother's murder at the hand of some irresponsible sex-crazed camp counselors. And I suppose we should close this off talking about the kills themselves, as they kind of go hand in hand with the killer, right? Half the fun in a slasher movie comes from the innovative and creative means by which the slasher does his thing. And being an Eli Roth movie, there were obvious expectations when it came to the practical effects and gore. Everybody knows he can push boundaries in that department, and we also know he enjoys doing it. And still, some people found the kills in Thanksgiving to be boring and predictable. Cabin Fever made me want to throw up, and the first Hostel movie gave me bad dreams for 3 weeks after I watched it. I don't even want to talk about Green Inferno, or else I'll end up traumatized all over again. And you know who was responsible for all of that? Eli fucking Roth. So think about that when you're saying Thanksgiving was boring. Think about it, you ungrateful fucks. How dare you? So, should you watch Thanksgiving if you haven't seen it already? Or should you just miss out on an Eli Roth masterpiece and risk the movie's potential future streaming revenue, possibly causing Mr. Roth to get angry at people like me who really just want to be his friend someday? I'm willing to compromise on loads of things, especially here on the internet where you're interacting with literally all walks of life. I want this channel to succeed more than I will ever let on. But I won't lie, and I will never sell my soul for it. Fuck you, Chris Stuckmann, fuck everything you represent, and fuck you, YouTube, for becoming the kind of platform that thrives on people like Chris Stuckmann. I will see you all very shortly with a brand new video format. Until next time, folks. It's me, Johnny, from that video you just watched, although I'm sure you know who I am, right? You should subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, it's easy to do, and it makes creative people like myself who thrive on compliments feel all warm and fuzzy. And if you like that last video, click on this next video because it's just as amazing. Click on it.